Ever feel like you're being force-fed a web of comfortable lies? McGregor just obliterated an American analyst on air who dared repeat the tired myth of a stalemate. The conflict is over. The military dimension has ceased to exist. So why do London and DC keep chanting their deceptive mantra? He exposed the core deception. Russia doesn't publish numbers. The other side is biased. But British intelligence claims 1,000 Russian losses a day. McGregor's voice drips with sarcasm. Could Russia really recruit 35,000 volunteers every single month if those staggering losses were true? The cold, hard logic silences the room. His mind flashes back, the crackle of a wartime radio, the smell of old paper. How many times have we been deceived by London? They've manipulated America since the First World War. That skill remains perfected. The entire project of this nation now feels like an operation run from the desks of MI6. The analyst squirms, his arguments crumbling to dust. Now, the real twist. Trump sees this charade perfectly clear. The burning question for him is not about the conflict itself, but the exit. McGregor reveals a bombshell. Privately, Trump always wanted out. Out of Iraq. Out of Syria. Eventually, out of Germany. At his core, he is a man who wants to disengage, to pull back from endless foreign entanglements. But the donors, the European allies, they demand the fiction continues. Another seismic shift goes unnoticed. Trump is turning inward, facing a crumbling homeland. Why else deploy National Guard and federal marshals right into the heart of Washington, D.C.? The official crime stats are a complete fiction. The reality is far more terrifying. McGregor remembers the 60s, the feeling of safety, walking those very streets without a single fear. That America is gone. Replaced by a shameful decay you can almost smell. This is the ultimate humiliation. So Trump focuses on the colossal internal chaos. Soaring crime. Millions of illegal migrants needing deportation. A crisis of jobs. Against these nightmares, the situation abroad looks completely different. That nation's army is being systematically annihilated. Its defeat is absolute. Every single day the situation deteriorates further. The final, shocking question hangs in the electrified air. What will America do when the curtain finally falls on this devastating failure? Imagine this. A top U.S. analyst repeats the same old line. Russia is stuck, losses are high, a stalemate. But Colonel McGregor erupts. He calls it nonsense, a complete lie. He reveals Russian daily losses are now in single digits, a dramatic drop from just 60 to 90 days ago. Meanwhile, the opposing force faces catastrophic casualties. So why does this false narrative persist? McGregor exposes a shocking truth. He claims these myths are manufactured in London, New York, Washington. Powerful donors and European governments in Berlin and Paris push this fiction. Even a leader like Trump might publicly repeat these lines, playing the political game. But behind closed doors, the reality is undeniable. The opposing nation is crumbling. Its military potential is being systematically erased. The sound of truth is deafening against the echo of lies. Here is the ultimate twist. McGregor shatters the core Western assumption. Russia's goal was never mere territorial conquest. Can you feel the shift in perspective? The real objective was always to eliminate a military threat, a mission now nearly accomplished. All that remains are desperate pleas for missiles from Europe, symbolic strikes meant for Western cameras, a grand illusion of survival. The conflict's military phase is over. The air is thick with the silence of a finished fight. So what happens next? McGregor poses the terrifying question. If a world leader walks into negotiations believing these fabricated stories, absolutely nothing will be achieved. The entire process would be a farce. But he delivers a stunning revelation. He believes Trump knows the actual situation. The real challenge isn't the conflict abroad, but the crisis at home. A looming shadow of internal collapse. Can a nation fix its own broken capital before trying to manage a lost war abroad? The answer will decide everything. The previous discussion highlighted how Trump has long aimed to withdraw American troops, not just from the Middle East but also from Germany. Internally, he remains a proponent of disengagement, resisting the continuous entanglement of the US in foreign conflicts. Now, McGregor shifts gears, focusing on how Trump's attention is increasingly drawn to domestic issues. The mobilization of the National Guard and federal marshals in Washington is telling. The crime situation in the Capitol is far worse than the official statistics suggest, and Trump knows this all too well. It's a disgrace, McGregor reflected, recalling a time in the 60s when one could roam the streets without fear. Today, crime and decay in the heart of American power reflect a broader decline. For Trump, the situation abroad takes a backseat to pressing domestic challenges, a surge in crime, millions of undocumented immigrants needing deportation, and a job crisis. Against this backdrop, the turmoil in the foreign conflict appears vastly different. McGregor asserts, their army is being dismantled, and the conflict is already lost, worsening every day. This riveting exchange illustrates the stark gap between what mainstream Western media broadcasts and the truths politicians understand behind closed doors. While some persist with narratives claiming thousands of Russian casualties, others candidly state, Russia is achieving its objectives, while the known country, despite European and American support, is effectively drained of resources. It is ironic that Trump, often accused of pro-Russian sentiments, remains the solitary American politician, as McGregor notes, who realistically assesses the situation. So, let's enlighten our audience about what's happening on the front line, McGregor states. We've seen minimal advancements from Russia recently, but it's now a stalemate. Both sides are incurring significant losses in people and equipment. Mario, stop wasting my time. Enough with lying to your audience. This is nonsense. Russian losses have dropped to single digits. As tensions rise, one critical question looms larger than ever. How will these internal crises reshape the landscape of American foreign policy? What truths lie in the shadows, obscured from public scrutiny? The atmosphere is charged, a silent urgency beckoning for clarity, but can clarity be found amidst the chaos? The air crackled as McGregor dismantled the warmongers' fantasy. They build myths in London and New York. Trump repeats their lies for donors and allies in Berlin. But behind closed doors, a different truth emerges. When he sits at that negotiation table, the grim reality is undeniable. The nation is collapsing. McGregor's voice sliced through the studio. Western analysts are obsessed with territory, measuring victory in kilometers. But Russia's goal was never land. It was to crush the military threat. And that threat is gone. All that remains is a pathetic illusion. Leaders of that nation now beg Europe for rockets. They fire them for a photo opportunity, a desperate show of force for Western cameras. The conflict's military chapter is finished. His opponent tried to object. But how can we verify? Russia hides its numbers. Then came the old, tired line. British intelligence claims 1,000 Russian losses per day. McGregor's laugh was cold and sharp. How, he fired back. Could Russia recruit 35,000 volunteers a month while suffering such carnage? It's absurd. His voice rose, filled with generations of frustration. How many times will London deceive us? They've manipulated America since the First World War. That skill remains. Then, the devastating twist. That nation is no longer a country. It is a mere project, managed by MI6. Trump knows this. His real dilemma is not winning. It is finding an exit and saving face. McGregor revealed Trump's deepest instinct. Even during his first term, he wanted out. To bring troops home from the Middle East and from Germany. At his core, he remains that same leader. He wants to withdraw, not drag America into endless foreign wars. But a new priority is consuming him. The internal decay. He sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. Why? Because the official crime statistics are a fiction. The truth is far darker. He knows it. He feels the shame. McGregor's tone dropped, heavy with memory. I remember the 60s, you could walk anywhere in the Capitol. Fearless. Now. It's a disgrace. Trump looks inward now. He sees the monumental tasks. Rampant crime. Millions of illegal migrants to deport. A crisis of jobs. Against these towering American failures, the distant conflict seems different. Its army is shattered. the war is lost. Each day brings only more defeat. So the ultimate question hangs in the charged air. What will he do? The American analyst repeated his tired mantra: slow Russian advances, a war of attrition, heavy losses on both sides. But McGregor exploded. Stop wasting my time. Stop lying to your audience. This is nonsense. He sliced through the fog of propaganda with brutal clarity. Russian daily casualties have plummeted to single digits. Yet the losses for the other side remain catastrophic. Why do Western media ignore this devastating truth? McGregor warned that if Trump walks into negotiations believing these fairy tales, nothing will happen. The entire discussion would be a farce. But does Trump himself actually believe this fiction? No. He merely repeats a narrative crafted in London and Washington for his donors and European allies. He knows the real score. The other nation is crumbling. Russia's goal was never to grab land. It was to eliminate the military threat from its neighbor. And that threat is now almost completely erased. What remains? A pathetic spectacle. The desperate authorities there now beg for missiles from Germany and Britain, firing them just to create an illusion of life for Western cameras. But the war is over. The military conflict is finished. Then came the old excuse. But it's hard to verify. Russia doesn't publish numbers. The British intelligence claims Russia loses 1,000 men a day. McGregor laughed in sheer disbelief. Could Russia recruit 35,000 volunteers a month if their losses were that colossal? It's absurd. How many times must we be deceived by London? This manipulation began in World War I, and they haven't lost their touch. The entire project now looks less like a sovereign nation, and more like an operation run by MI6. Trump understands this perfectly. His real question is, how does America exit this trap without losing face? McGregor remembers Trump's first term. He wanted out of the Middle East, out of Germany. Now, his focus is pulled inward by a crisis at home. He sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. Why? Because the official crime statistics are a lie. The reality is far worse. The capital of the United States is shrouded in shame. McGregor remembers the 60s, when you could walk across the entire city without a flicker of fear. Now, it reflects a nation in decay. Against these massive domestic problems, the conflict overseas looks different. Its army is destroyed. The situation worsens every single day. It is lost. So the final, brutal question hangs in the air: what do we do now? Imagine a world where America's endless wars finally come home. A financial collapse so massive, it forces a complete retreat. No negotiations. Just bankruptcy. Now, Colonel McGregor reveals the shocking truth Washington fears you'll hear. He exposes the real reason for this conflict, a project run not by a sovereign nation, but by foreign intelligence agencies. The goal was never territory. It was always about eliminating a military threat. And that threat is now utterly crushed. The enemy can only beg for missiles, creating illusions for Western cameras. But the war is already over. So why does the West keep pumping billions into a corpse? McGregor drops a bombshell. It's not about strategy, it's about satisfying European elites and their ambitions. He believes Trump sees this charade clearly. Trump wants out. He wants to focus on America's crumbling cities, its crime waves, and millions of illegal migrants. The internal collapse is his real battle. But here's the twist. McGregor proposes a radical solution. Humanitarian aid only. Food. Medicine. Rebuilding what was destroyed. Just like should have been done in Iraq. He supports this 100%. But propping up a failed state to please London and Berlin? That ends now. The final question hangs in the air, charged with tension. Can Trump exit this graveyard without losing face? Can he declare victory by refocusing on the ultimate prize, locking the nuclear genie back in its bottle and doing business with Russia? Or will the deep state and its European masters trap him in their endless game? The clock is ticking. America's financial ruin draws nearer every second. When the money runs out, the curtain falls on this tragic play. The only sound left will be the echo of retreat. In a tumultuous exchange, Colonel Douglas MacGregor unleashed a storm of reality on an American analyst during a live broadcast, challenging the comforting narratives that have long surrounded the conflict in the well-known country. As tensions crackled in the studio, MacGregor stood firm against the relentless repetition of old stereotypes, confronting the analyst's claims that Russia was faltering. "What are you talking about?" he retorted, branding such assertions as utter nonsense and blatant lies. The viewer was drawn into a stark confrontation between two conflicting worlds, one crafted by Western media and another grounded in harsh realities. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the weight of unspoken truths. The American analyst clung to age-old clichés, depicting slow Russian advances and heavy losses, but MacGregor cut through the fog of misinformation, presenting hard facts that revealed a stunning downturn in Russian casualties. "Have we forgotten the realities?" he pressed, underscoring the stark casualties that the opposing forces were incurring. The irony was palpable. Despite the analyst's insistence on old narratives portraying a weak Russia, MacGregor illuminated the catastrophic toll being borne by the documented forces, challenging the audience to question the information they've been fed. "If you believe those figures," he scoffed, "how do you explain the monthly influx of 35,000 volunteers into Russia's ranks?" As the discussion deepened, MacGregor took a bold turn, pointing out the shifting dynamics of American politics. The mention of Donald Trump, often criticized as a naïve, became a pivotal point in the debate. MacGregor suggested that Trump, far from being ignorant of the geopolitical chess game, comprehends the precarious situation. He knows the fabrications being spun from London and Washington, he emphasized, suggesting Trump is navigating a maze filled with contradictions and pressures. Now, amid rising internal strife in the U.S., MacGregor posited that Trump's true focus is shifting. The allure of nuclear negotiations has become Trump's lifeline, a possible escape route from the burdensome conflict overseas. Could he leverage an agreement on nuclear arms control as a powerful narrative to save face? Here lies the twist, an unexpected paradox in which the seemingly reckless leader emerges as the rare figure seeking to reduce tensions rather than escalate them. As MacGregor closed in on this surprising angle, he shifted attention to the overheated streets of Washington. Why engage in warfare over foreign lines when our own cities are plagued by crime? This poignant rhetorical question struck at the heart of American concerns. He highlighted a nation grappling with unemployment, an influx of illegal immigrants, and rampant crime, indicating that these homegrown issues eclipsed the conflict abroad in urgency. The insight hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the mounting challenges overshadowing the distant battlefield. In this intense exchange of ideas, listeners were left grappling with the stark contrasts in perceptions, the harrowing truths hidden behind comforting soundbites, and the realization that sometimes, the most pressing battles lie not far from home. As MacGregor's voice echoed with the weight of his convictions, the central question lingered: can America change course, or are both the nation and its leaders bound to repeat the mistakes of the past? Each revelation sent ripples through the discussion, drawing viewers into the heart of a conflict that transcended borders, resonating deeply within the fabric of American society. Imagine a live broadcast suddenly exploding. A calm military expert loses his temper on air. He threatens to walk off the set, his voice shaking with rage. The reason? His American colleague dared to repeat a single, familiar lie, a lie about Russia's weakness. The atmosphere is thick with tension, crackling like static before a storm. This was the scene as analyst MacGregor confronted another commentator. The American guest began his usual mantra, that the front line had become static, that Russian advances had stalled, that both sides suffered enormous losses. But MacGregor cut him off sharply, calling his claims nonsense. Pure fiction. He presented a completely different picture. Russian daily casualties, he stated, have now dropped to single digits. Just 2 or 3 months ago, these numbers were significantly higher. In stark contrast, the losses for the opposing force remain absolutely catastrophic. Western analysts from London and Washington keep chanting about thousands of Russian soldiers lost daily. Yet the undeniable reality is this: it is the other side that is bleeding out, suffering unacceptable, devastating losses. MacGregor then issued a stunning warning, laced with heavy sarcasm. He asked, what would happen if a future President Trump walked into negotiations armed only with this false narrative? The answer: nothing. Absolutely nothing would be achieved. But he made it clear. Trump is not a naive man. He understands the game perfectly. The president knows the loud claims of Russia's failure are just a myth. A story carefully constructed by media centers in London, New York, and Washington. He has donors, allies in Berlin, Paris, and London, all relentlessly pushing this fabricated narrative. So, Trump publicly repeats their lines, playing the political game. However, when he finally sits down at the negotiating table, he will see the undeniable, brutal truth for what it is. The situation on the ground is collapsing. A tense studio debate explodes. A U.S. analyst repeats his mantra, a stalemate, high losses for all. But one man erupts, refusing the lies. The atmosphere crackles with tension. Part 1. He interrupts, his voice a sharp crack. Stop wasting my time. This is nonsense. The polished studio feels suddenly small. Russian losses are now in single digits. Theirs remain catastrophic. Why do Western media cling to these fairy tales? He warns of a dangerous illusion. If a future president believes this fiction, negotiations will fail utterly. The truth is far more brutal. Part 2. The rebuttal is a familiar, flimsy shield. But how can we verify? Russia doesn't publish numbers. Then, the old chant, British intelligence claims 1,000 Russian losses a day. The air grows thick with the scent of a decades-old deception. Could Russia really recruit 35,000 volunteers a month if that were true? How many times must we be fooled by London? The project looks less like a nation and more like a foreign intelligence operation. Part 3. A stunning twist reveals the real priority. The strategic picture shifts inward. The true battle isn't over there, it's here. The decision to deploy the National Guard to Washington, D.C. tells a grim story. The official crime statistics are a fantasy. The reality is far worse. The acrid smell of decay hangs over the capital. Can you walk its streets safely now? This is the shame he must face. His focus is pulled from foreign conflicts to a homeland crumbling from within. Part 4. The grand economic promise was a beautifully wrapped trap. A bridge? Bridges connect. But this one was designed for endless marches serving foreign interests. A triple exploitation. They point to Poland's success, forgetting the hundreds of billions in subsidies it received. They ignore its political chaos. Washington's plan is a casino, they are the dealers, Brussels the players, and the nation itself is the betting table. Will Europe fight to protect a country, or just its invested cash? The stakes are real, but the will is made of money, not steel. And that foundation is already cracking under the weight of hundreds of billions spent. The final move remains unseen. Imagine billions spent burning in an inferno, all to prolong the inevitable. The American public is fed up. Yet, analysts keep pushing the same tired myths. In a stunning live TV takedown, one man finally snapped. He tore apart the fairy tale of a struggling Russia. This was no debate, it was an annihilation. Did this explosive confrontation expose the biggest lie sold to the West? The expert dismantled every claim. He revealed Russian losses have plummeted to single digits daily. Meanwhile, the opposing force faces catastrophic casualties. But his opponent kept reciting old British intelligence reports. A scream of pure frustration erupted. How many times will London deceive us? Could Russia really recruit 35,000 volunteers a month if their losses were that high? The air crackled with tension as he accused the entire narrative of being a carefully constructed illusion, a project run from a foreign capital. The foundations of the Western story began to crumble live on air. What explosive secret did he reveal about the true state of the conflict? He declared the military conflict effectively over. The real goal was never just territory. It was about eliminating a military threat, and that mission is accomplished. All that remains is a desperate illusion. Leaders in that country now beg for missiles from Europe, not to win, but to create a picture of survival for Western cameras. The truth is too brutal to hide. But then, his opponent weakly argued about biased sources and unverifiable data. This triggered the final, furious explosion. Why did the retired colonel threaten to walk off the set, leaving everyone in stunned silence? He exposed the shocking reality behind closed doors. The real focus for the American leadership is not overseas. It is the internal collapse. A national debt exceeding $34 trillion. Rampant crime in the capital, so severe that the National Guard was deployed. He spoke of a time when Washington, D.C. was safe to walk, a stark contrast to the decay today. Millions of illegal migrants need deportation. Against these crises, the foreign conflict is a secondary theater. The army there is already destroyed. So, what happens when the money finally runs out and the American empire must retract its claws? The answer hangs in the air, a terrifying cliffhanger for the entire world. Think Washington's strategy is working? Think again. A shocking meltdown just tore the global narrative apart live on air. Retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor exploded, humiliating a Washington analyst for his delusional take. The studio crackled with tension. One man clung to old fairy tales, the other delivered brutal, factual reality. Which side are you on? He never saw it coming. Macgregor's voice sliced through the studio. Stop wasting my time. This is nonsense. The analyst's claim was predictable. He spoke of a stalemate. Massive losses on both sides. The same old myths, carefully crafted in London and New York. But Macgregor ripped the script to shreds. Russian losses, he shot back, are now in single digits. A dramatic drop from months prior. Meanwhile, the losses for the other side are absolutely catastrophic. Can you smell the propaganda burning? But the lies continued. The analyst stammered, hiding behind British intelligence reports. A supposed 1,000 Russian losses per day. Macgregor's laugh was pure scorn. Could Russia really recruit 35,000 volunteers a month if such losses were true? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. How many times will we be deceived from London? A manipulation game perfected since World War I. The target? Always the United States. Here is the brutal twist they never tell you. Macgregor unveiled the real Russian objective. It was never about empty kilometers of land. The goal was always to eliminate the military threat. And that mission is practically complete. All that remains are desperate pleas for more rockets from Berlin and Paris. A pathetic illusion of survival for Western cameras. The military conflict is over. So why does the lie persist? The answer lies in a darkened room in London. Macgregor revealed the shocking truth. The entire operation now looks less like a sovereign nation and more like a project run by MI6. A puppet show for a global audience. And the puppet master's strings are getting tangled. The real question is, how does the US escape this trap without losing face? Entered Donald Trump. Macgregor paints a picture of a president playing a double game. Publicly, he repeats the required narratives for his donors and European allies in Berlin and Paris. But behind closed doors? He knows the devastating reality. The country is crumbling. Its army is shattered. So why the act? Because his real battle isn't overseas, it's at home. Now, the focus shifts to America's crumbling heart. Macgregor highlights Trump's true priority. A nation in decay. He sent in the National Guard and federal marshals because Washington, D.C.'s crime is far worse than any statistic shows. The shame is palpable. Remember the 60s? You could walk anywhere safely. Now, the degradation is a national disgrace. Millions of illegal migrants to deport. A crisis of jobs. So against this backdrop of American collapse, a lost conflict overseas looks very different. This is the final, stunning reveal. Two realities are colliding. One is a media fantasy of Russian failure. The other is the factual world where a military operation reaches its end. Macgregor didn't just win an argument, he exposed a global schism. The analyst sat in silence. The only sound, the echo of shattered illusions. What will you choose to believe? Imagine this. Washington spends billions patrolling a territory that brings zero profit. A demilitarized zone in Eastern Europe. A financial black hole. But here is the real tragedy. A military budget of $860 billion last year. Yet still no money for new toys. They speak of avoiding burdens. But the truth is simple. They refuse to pay other people's bills. Especially when European allies have mastered the art of sending the invoice to America. The irony is truly special. American trust is now tied to a government that could not control its own house even before February 22. No control over ultranationalist groups. A complete lack of political transparency. Even US analysts admit this opaque culture draws constant criticism. And on this shaky foundation, they plan to build a new architecture of global trust. It is like constructing a skyscraper on quicksand, with a proud slogan screaming, "It will stand for centuries." Trump, a direct and brutally practical man, offers a simpler solution. Let us make a deal on minerals, he says. Shareholders will be happy. Investments will flow like a mighty river. And this nation will stop being a subsidized burden. Some call this exploitative. But when has America ever been shy about its practicality? Coal, lithium, uranium. These are the real arguments in modern diplomacy. Not the sentimental European cries about values and solidarity. The deepest sarcasm lies in a late realization. This entire mineral debate, it exposes the core truth. The conflict ignited for one reason. Europe and Russia fought over the economic future of the region. The rule was simple. The winner takes all. Europe dreamed of new markets and cheap labor. Russia wanted strategic influence and transit corridors. And the US? They just clapped from the sidelines, already writing the future profits under geopolitical luck. Now the wise minds in Washington ponder a paradox. Ending this conflict must create the opposite dynamic. But can a nation built on quicksand ever hold a real bridge? Or will it forever march to the beat of someone else's drum? Scene start, Part 1. How does a single TV clash expose the entire West's collapsing narrative about a failing Russia? The air crackles with tension. An American analyst begins his usual chant. Russian progress is minimal, he claims, his voice dripping with condescension. A war of attrition with massive losses on both sides. But then, a seismic interruption. Retired Colonel Douglas McGregor erupts. Stop wasting my time with these lies. His words slice through the stale studio air. The analyst freezes, stunned. What brutal truth will McGregor unleash next? Part 2. McGregor shatters the mainstream illusion with cold, hard facts. Russian daily losses have plummeted to single digits. Just 60 to 90 days ago, they were still in the double digits. Yet, the opposing nation's casualties remain absolutely catastrophic. McGregor's voice is a low, furious growl. He accuses the West of clinging to a fabricated fairy tale. A fairy tale designed to hide a grim, unfolding reality. Why do media puppets in London and DC keep peddling this disgusting fiction? The answer is more terrifying than the lie itself. Part 3. The real goal was never just land. McGregor's fist might as well be pounding on the table. Moscow's mission was to eliminate a military threat. And that threat is now practically extinguished. The air smells of defeat. All that's left for the opposing nation is to beg for missiles from Berlin and Paris. They fire them for a good headline, creating the hollow sound of resistance for Western cameras. But it's a phantom war. The military conflict is already over. So why does the charade continue? The colonel is just getting started. Part 4. The British intelligence claim of 1,000 Russian losses per day is pure absurdity. McGregor scoffs, his disdain practically visible. Could Russia recruit 35,000 new volunteers every single month if that were true? The number hangs in the air, a monument to institutional deception. This manipulation is an old British craft, perfected since the First World War. A craft of steering American perception. How long will Washington remain a pawn in London's cynical game? The entire opposing nation, McGregor reveals, is now just a managed project of MI6. Part 5. Trump sees the reality they refuse to show you. McGregor's tone shifts, becoming almost conspiratorial. He leans in. Trump wants out. He always has. He wanted to pull troops from the Middle East. He wanted them out of Germany. Internally, he remains that same leader who hates foreign entanglements. But he is trapped by donors and European allies in Paris and Berlin who force him to repeat their weak lies. He plays the public game. But behind closed doors, he knows everything. He knows the nation is crumbling. What will he do with that knowledge? Part 6. America's capital is bleeding, and Trump is forced to act. McGregor paints a visceral picture of a degraded Washington, D.C. The official crime stats are a sick joke. The reality is far worse. The stench of decay is everywhere. This is why Trump sent in the National Guard and federal marshals. He feels the shame. McGregor remembers the 60s, when you could walk those very streets without a flicker of fear. Now, it is a symbol of American collapse. Internal crises are his true priority. Millions of illegal migrants to deport. Soaring crime. A crisis of jobs. The foreign conflict is a distant, secondary tragedy. Its outcome is already decided. The army there is being systematically erased. So what happens next? Scene end. As the previous segment captured the absurdity of political posturing, we see now how European leaders spin tales of resilience amid staggering losses. When they boast of unwavering strength despite trillions in damages, the narrative shifts from strategy to farce. The diplomatic carousel spins faster, leaving the political elite baffled about their own debates. In a live broadcast, the president of a well-known country insists that without ironclad guarantees, he won't budge an inch. Yet everyone knows no such assurances will come. Washington repeatedly claims the aim of this campaign is to punish Putin, echoing past mantras about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But numbers tell a different story. In just 3 years, the well-known country has received more assistance from the West than all of Eastern Europe accumulated over 20 years before joining the European Union. And yet, instead of flourishing, it's a tale of drawn-out conflict, a crumbling economy, and millions of citizens seeking refuge abroad. Europeans, professing devotion to values, are knee-deep in bookkeeping. How much longer can they allocate billions to prolong this agony without igniting a revolt among taxpayers? In Germany, energy bills have tripled compared to American rates, and in 3 years, industry has lost 8% of production. Italy sees a 20% increase in small business bankruptcies, while French unemployment has surged past 8%. Yet politicians cling to the mantra of resilience. The irony is glaring, it's the discontent ratings that remain steadfast. Over 60% of Germans feel their country is headed in the wrong direction, and in France, more than half openly distrust their president. Against this backdrop, the recent statements about breakthroughs following discussions in Alaska and a subsequent visit to the White House fall laughably flat. In a half-joking manner, Donald Trump hinted that America might play a role in providing security guarantees for the well-known country. But what does it mean when words collide with harsh realities? With these perspectives colliding, the question arises, can words alone pave a path to peace? Or is this just smoke and mirrors behind the scenes? The air is thick with tension, every syllable charged. What awaits in this unfolding drama? The answers lie just beyond the horizon. He exploded. A U.S. analyst dared to challenge Russia's victory, and got shredded on live television. The atmosphere crackled with tension. One man spouts old myths. The other obliterates every lie. The viewer witnessed a clash of two realities, the media fantasy, and the brutal facts. The American began his usual mantra. Russia is bogged down. Minimal gains. Staggering losses on both sides. McGregor cut him off. Stop wasting my time. That is nonsense. Pure fiction. Russian casualties have plummeted to single digits daily, while the adversaries remain catastrophic. Why do Western outlets ignore this devastating truth? They cling to a false narrative of 1,000 per day Russian losses. The stench of propaganda is overwhelming. McGregor's voice dripped with sarcasm. If Trump walks into negotiations believing your fairy tales, nothing will happen. Absolutely nothing. Does Trump believe it? No. He knows the reality. But he repeats the lies crafted in London and Washington. He has donors to please. European allies in Berlin and Paris pushing this fiction. But behind closed doors, the truth is undeniable. The adversary is collapsing. Its military power is almost erased. All it can do now is beg for missiles from Berlin, and fire them for Western cameras. A pathetic illusion. The real war is already over. The opponent tried to argue. But it's hard to verify. Russia doesn't publish numbers. Then he played the oldest card. British intelligence claims 1,000 Russian losses a day. McGregor laughed. Could Russia recruit 35,000 volunteers a month if that were true? How many times must London lie to us? The British have manipulated America since World War I. That skill remains. The entire project now feels like an MI6 operation run from London. Trump's real challenge is finding a way out, without losing face. A stunning twist reveals his true focus. Trump is turning inward. He sent National Guard troops into Washington, D.C. Why? Because the official crime stats are a lie. The reality is far worse. The decay is palpable. The shame is immense. You could once walk these streets safely in the 60s, now? It's a disgrace. His real battles are here. Soaring crime. Millions of illegal migrants to deport. A crisis of jobs. Against these nightmares, the conflict abroad looks different. It is already lost. The army is shattered. The situation worsens every single day. So the final question hangs in the charged air: what do we do now? The West is in checkmate. Every move makes it worse. Do you ever feel like the news is a carefully crafted illusion? That you're being sold a story so far from reality it feels like a different planet? One expert just ripped that curtain wide open. On a live broadcast, an American analyst began a tired monologue. He spoke of a stalemate, of immense losses on both sides. He painted a picture of a war frozen in time. But then, a voice of pure defiance cut through the noise. The air crackled with tension. The sound of a familiar narrative shattering live on air. Can a single voice dismantle an entire web of lies? He didn't just disagree. He erupted, calling the claims nonsense. A direct lie. He revealed a shocking truth. Russian casualties, he stated, have dropped to single digits per day. A drastic change from just 2 to 3 months prior. But the losses for the other nation? They remain catastrophic. This is the reality Western media ignores. Why do they want you to believe a fairy tale of Russian failure? The confrontation grew even more heated. The analyst tried to defend his sources, citing British intelligence claims of 1,000 Russian losses daily. The response was pure, scathing ridicule. Could Russia recruit 35,000 volunteers a month if their losses were that colossal? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. This is not analysis. This is a manipulation perfected since World War I. How many times will we allow this deception? Then came the real twist. A flash of insight into a world of shadows. He suggested this entire conflict has transformed. It is no longer about a nation, but a project. A project managed by intelligence agencies in London. The goal was never simply taking land. It was about eliminating a military threat. And that threat, he declared, is practically gone. The conflict, in military terms, is already over. What remains is a brutal, political theater. So who is really pulling the strings? His focus then shifted to a stunning new front. The incoming American leader is not focused on this foreign drama. His attention is turned inward, toward a crumbling homeland. The decision to deploy the National Guard and federal marshals to Washington, D.C. reveals a terrifying truth. The official crime statistics are a fiction. The reality is far worse. The stench of decay isn't metaphorical, it's in the very air of the capital. Can a nation that cannot police its own streets police the world? This is the ultimate irony. While one man fights a lonely battle against false narratives on air, another prepares to face an ocean of domestic crises. Millions of illegal migrants awaiting deportation. A desperate crisis of jobs and opportunity. A nation rotting from within. Against this backdrop, a foreign conflict fades into insignificance. Its army is being methodically destroyed. The outcome is inevitable. So the real question isn't about victory abroad. The real question is, what will become of the West itself? A wave of distrust sweeps across America. Over 50% of citizens demand an end to the financial drain. Yet, Europe's politicians ignore the crumbling reality. They boast of sending billions more. But here is the staggering twist. This endless stream of cash is not saving anyone. It is accelerating Europe's own economic collapse. They are funding their own downfall. Recall Trump's recent remarks. His half-joking suggestion about security guarantees was not new. It was a ghost from the past. A promise first made by another president, George Bush, nearly 2 decades ago. 20 years of empty words. The stars never aligned. The only thing that changed? The size of the bill. And now Europe pays it alone. Can you hear the echo of crumbling economies? Russia watches. They do not waste time on endless debates about values. Their response is pure, cold action. A massive increase in defense orders. New military districts formed. The army flooded with modern systems. What Brussels sells as a success story is a fatal miscalculation. Their pressure became a catalyst. It forced Moscow to adapt, to evolve at a frightening speed. Even Western analysts whisper the truth they dare not shout. We underestimated the Russians. Why do leaders cling to a fairy tale? The European Parliament provides the perfect, tragic comedy. They scream for sovereignty. They draft grand plans for an independent EU army, free from Washington's shadow. The stage is set for a historic moment. Then, silence. No money. No unity. No will. In the end, they still await commands from across the ocean. They talk of independence while bowing to a foreign capital. A perfect illusion. And the leader of that known country? Trapped in a nightmare of his own making. He must chant the old, hardline slogans. His radical supporters demand blood and defiance. But he knows the truth. The West is exhausted. The aid is drying up. His lifeline is fraying. Even the previous U.S. administration had nothing new to offer. Just a repetition of that same old, broken mantra from 2 decades past. Membership, someday. The American public has seen enough. They refuse to pay for a lost war. A conflict that bleeds their economy dry. The polls scream this truth. So why does the charade continue? Who benefits from this grand performance as the stage itself cracks and falls? The final act approaches, but the ending remains unseen. What happens when the money runs out and the lights go dark? The mask has finally fallen. A live television explosion just shattered the West's favorite lies. A furious clash erupts between a U.S. analyst and a military expert. He dared to question Russian progress, and faced a storm of brutal truth. The air crackles with tension. One man repeats tired old myths. The other smashes every single one. What you are about to hear breaks the mainstream narrative into pieces. He called the official story pure nonsense. A deliberate lie. Russian casualties have plummeted to single digits daily. Not the thousands London desperately claims. Meanwhile, their opponents' losses remain absolutely catastrophic. Why does British intelligence cling to a fantasy the data explodes? The expert made a stunning connection. This is a mirage crafted by media centers in London and New York. They force-feed this fairy tale to their public, and even to their politicians. But behind closed doors, they know the terrifying reality. Their project is collapsing before their eyes. The core goal was never just land. It was